So you know that moment where you ask AI something and it gives you back this long, confident sounding answer and something in your gut just goes, that's not it. It sounded fine. It checks the boxes, but it doesn't actually help you make a decision to move forward. So you might hit regenerate maybe a few times and you get back basically the same answer, but kind of in a different outfit. And here's what's actually happening at that moment. AI isn't giving you its best answer. It's giving you its safest answer, the one that's least likely to be wrong, the one that tries to please everyone. And it ends up being truly useful to nobody. But here's the thing. It's not a flaw. That's just how these large language models work by default. The flaw is thinking that regenerating it is going to actually fix it because you didn't really change the process. You just kind of rolled the same dice again, the dice all over again. So today I want to show you a 5-step sequence that actually fixes this, not by prompting better, but by making AI learn and earn the final answer instead of just handing it to you. But quickly, I just want to be upfront. I'm not an AI researcher. I'm just a guy that likes to test prompts and ideas until they fall apart, and I pay attention to what holds up. And when something keeps producing good results, that's when I know it's worth sharing. And this is one of those things. And I call it the surviving answer method. And here's why I use the word surviving. When you just ask AI a question, every idea that it gives you gets to live. Nothing gets challenged. Nothing gets cut. The weak stuff sits right next to the really good stuff, the strong stuff, and they all look equally valid. This method changes that. It puts every answer under pressure, and only the ideas that survive that pressure make it into the final response. Definitely not the first answer. It's not the safest answer. It's the answer that actually earns its place, and that's a completely different thing. Now, the sequence has 5 steps. Each one does a very specific job. And by the time you get to step 5, you're not looking at the same answer anymore. You're looking at something that literally had to earn its place. It had to survive. And that's what changes everything. So step 1 is the answer. You get the strongest first response. That's what you want to do. Step 2 is you oppose it. So you force AI to attack it. Step 3 sorts it. So it separates what's solid from what's shaky. The 4th step is deciding. It defines what the better actually means for this specific situation. And then step 5, the final step, is to rebuild and reconstruct it using only what actually survived. So let me show you what this kind of looks like. And in this example, I'm going to use digital product ideas, not because this is a video about products, but because it's clean and most people can understand it and follow it. But first, this is important. When should you actually run this sequence? And when is it overkill? So this works best when the answer requires judgment. Let me explain. This means that there's no single correct answer. There are trade-offs, and the quality of the output depends on what you actually care about most. Things like, what offer should I lead with? Which direction should I take this channel? What's the strongest angle for this script? How do I position this against competitors? Which idea actually has legs versus which one just sounds good? Those are judgment calls. There's no lookup table for them. You can't just go to Google and Google the right answer for your specific situation. And that's exactly why running them through this sequence, applying real pressure instead of just accepting the first thing AI hands you, well, that actually changes the output in a very meaningful way. And that's where this sequence earns its keep. So where you don't want to use this is when you just need a fact or a straightforward task. Summarizing an article, explaining how something works, writing a description from a spec sheet. Running this method on a simple task is like pressure testing a grocery list. It's overkill. You don't need to do it. So with that being said, this is step 1 and the exact prompt, and I'm going to have it linked in the description, so don't worry, you'll be able to grab it. Now, again, this is just an example. I will have the template of the prompt below, but this is for the digital product. So this is basically what it says. Give me your strongest ideas for a digital product I could sell online. I'm a solo creator with useful knowledge or experience. The product needs to be practical, solvable by one person, and something people would actually pay for. No big team, no startup funding required. Rank the ideas strongest to weakest and briefly explain why each one has potential. Then you hit send. AI comes back with something like, well, you should do templates, or you could do mini courses, or a Notion system, a swipe file, a niche ebook, right? It looks decent. It sounds reasonable, maybe even kind of exciting. And this is the moment that many people stop and begin to use this answer and move on from there. But we've got 4 more prompts in this sequence to go through. So now we move on to step 2, which is opposing it. So now you just send this prompt. Take the strongest opposing point of view and challenge those ideas. Which ones are too generic, too saturated, too hard to sell, or unclear in value for a solo creator? Be specific. Now, again, this is based on digital product creation and trying to get ideas. So that's why it's specific to that. Again, the templated prompt will be below. What happens now gets very interesting to see what happens. The niche book idea in this example, well, AI just told you now that the market is flooded and buyers are skeptical of PDFs that they've never heard of. That template pack suggestion, yeah, it's viable, but only if the niche is tight enough and you didn't specify a niche in your original prompt. The Notion system, it suggested, another good concept, but it requires ongoing support, and a lot of solo creators just underestimate that. Now the ideas look different. The cracks are visible, and that's exactly what you want, because now you know what you're actually working with, right? Which moves us into step 3, which is sorting through it. This is the next prompt in the sequence. Sort the ideas and critiques into 3 groups. 1, well-grounded and solid. 2, promising but unproven. And 3, weak assumptions or likely failure points. Then identify what still holds up after the critique. Now you have a map, not a pile of ideas and a pile of critiques, an actual map of what's strong, what's maybe, and what's noise. And you can see how the new answer is starting to take shape now as you're doing this. So that is what moves you on to step 4, which is deciding what stays. And this is the step that almost nobody takes. This was that step in the process that I started doing and realizing how powerful this actually is. Skipping this is why final AI answers often feel like they're trying to be everything at once. Right? And I'm sure that you've seen that before. So here's that prompt. And this is where you would change some of the standard that you specifically want for your case or for what you're trying to actually do. And again, you can change this in the actual template. But essentially what we're saying is before rebuilding, choose the single most important standard for evaluating the surviving ideas. Practicality, demand, ease of creation, low risk, profit potential, or long-term value. Tell me which one matters most here and why. And maybe you choose ease of creation because you're building your first product and you just want to win. Maybe you choose demand because you've tried things before that didn't sell. The point is you choose. And now AI has a lens, a real one. And the final answer is going to actually really mean something. And that's how you move into the final step. It's rebuild it. So here's that final prompt. Rebuild the final answer using only what survived. Apply the decision rule you chose. Then stress test it. What could still make this fail or underperform in the real world? That stress test line at the end is not optional. It's what separates a polished answer from a tested one. And tested is what you actually want. So let's think about what just actually happened. You started with 5 generic digital product ideas ranked by an AI trying to be helpful, in this example at least, right? You ended with 1 or 2 genuinely filtered, pressure-tested directions chosen based on a standard that you defined with their failure modes already mapped out for you. That's not a better prompt. It's a better process. And the output reflects that every single time. Now, I do want to warn you, this is a scenario that you will probably hit at some point. You run all 5 steps. The final answer is mostly there, but one part of it still feels off. It's maybe a little vague or a little generic, or it's not quite matching what you actually need or what you're actually looking for. Do not start over. Do not regenerate. Just send this prompt. Run the surviving answer method again, but only fix what failed. Then rebuild. That's it. Just one line. Seriously, that's it. What that does is force the AI to do surgical repair instead of starting from scratch. It's not rethinking everything. It's isolating the weak point and tightening only that. And that's a completely different level of iteration. And once you use it, you're probably never going to go back to hitting regenerate again. So this is what you should try to do if you want to try this out. You can do this right now in whatever AI tool that you're using, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok, whatever it is that you want to use. So open up a new conversation. Type a question that you've been thinking about, or maybe something that you've asked before and the answer just wasn't quite good enough. Run it through this 5-step sequence. Answer, oppose it, sort it, make the decision, rebuild it. Those 5 things. The one that you absolutely cannot skip is decide. I wouldn't skip any of them, to be honest with you, but you do not want to skip the decide. That's the step that gives the final answer a real point of view instead of a safe, balanced, generic non-answer. And when you try it, do me a favor, leave me a comment. Tell me what you use it on. Tell me how it worked. Tell me if it showed you something other than just saying, a lot of people will just say, be a skeptic, act like a skeptic and look at this and all that kind of stuff. This takes it a few more levels deep. So if you do this and you use it and you try it and it works for you or whatever, let me know in the comments. I do try to read every single comment. I do try to respond back to every single comment as well. I might miss some here or there, but please leave me some information. Let me know how this worked for you. But other than that, that's it. I hope you found this useful. This is Craig, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.